Hey folks, welcome to another episode of What Can Contrast Do? This is my little short mini series of just short video clips going through some of what the Citadel Contrast paints can do and answering questions from my viewers on my Facebook page for various things. Now, we kind of handled this one in the Let's Talk, but I wanted to actually do some show as well. Can you paint infinity miniatures with the new contrast paints, and will they be good for that? Our argument in the Let's Talk was that those miniatures have so much detail on them, such a nice fine detail level, that these paints should theoretically be great at helping to pick that out. So I'm going to show that today, hopefully, and answer that question is how useful these are going to be for painting infinity miniatures. I have a brawler here from the N2A army. And the color scheme for these folks is a lot of greens and browns. They have a very military drab, so you can kind of translate this onto any military style miniatures that you want to do. I'm going to use the Creed camo, I think, for all of the pants. And then I'm going to go with the Wildwood for the buckles and the bags and stuff like that. And then let these guys dry, because I don't want them to fade together. So Creed camo is right here. Again, you don't really know what it's going to look like dry on the miniature until after it's gone on. Now, in this case, I've actually used some Vallejo surface primer over top of this Rust-Oleum chalked. So this is a sort of like a greeny gray color, and it's a Paint Plus primer. I've had no problems with it. It's matte, it's nice and clean. I painted my Aleph army with it, and we're gonna try it as a base coat today for these contrast paints without airbrushing either of these two colors over top of it, the Wraithbone or what's the other one called, Grayseer, and just see how it goes. I don't think it's going to cause any issues, honestly, because as long as you're not using something with a great grain to it, you should just be fine. And oh, that's going on really nice, actually. Yeah, so what's funny is I think there's going to be a lot of value in this for painting infinity miniatures, because a lot of time the detail in infinity miniatures is so fine that it's either stressful to paint or you just don't paint it. You just leave it, and a lot of folks get their detail paint or sort of details picked out on infinity miniatures by using airbrushes, because the airbrush will find that raised area when you're doing airbrush highlights and give it a little bit of a splash of color, a splash of light, without you having to go in and physically fade or blend it yourself with your brush. And so this is pretty much the same idea, right? It's going to find all of those details and make them pop for you without you having to go in and do that. And that's actually looking really good on the fatigues. I'm really happy with that, actually. Now, the only trick is, again, with infinity miniatures, the details are so small, you don't want to blend the colors together. So if you're going to use this for your base coats, because I'm going to go back and I'm going to touch all this up when I'm done and add other details and colors and make them pop and stuff. But you don't want to get your green where your brown's going to go. So I'm really trying right now to just get the fatigues, get the smock, and not get any on her actual gear bags and stuff like that, because I don't want them to get painted the same color. I want them to be that nice rich chocolate brown. But this is looking really good. This is giving us a lot of definition for a minimal amount of work. And folks are really painted by, or folks I find are really intimidated by infinity miniatures, especially if they're novice painters or they're coming from a chunkier aesthetic like War Machine or Warhammer 40k, where the proportions are a lot more heroic and you're not dealing with a lot of fine detail. And this will certainly do a lot, I think, to alleviate fears, because this is just primer plus a color, and that's looking pretty good when it dries. So there we go. So there's the green done, and what I'm going to do is, I think that's the green done. I'm having a hard time telling where everything is, because once again, infinity miniatures, right? The details are so small. I'm trying to make sure that I've got the right colors in the right spots. Yeah, and the interior of if I look at the picture for the official color scheme, the interior of the shirt is actually a brown. So I'm going to leave that. Make sure I got it all the way down. And then let's grab some of that Wildwood. Some of them Wildwoods. I do want this to dry for a second, because if I don't, I'm pretty sure it's going to just bleed together, and I don't want that to happen. So there's contrast Wildwood right here. This should be good for all the stowage and gear bags and stuff. And maybe I'll do the laces on her boots that color too. That would be cool, because I can do the boots themselves a different lighter brown. and have the laces be that color. Now the armor plates and all of like her knee pads and all that stuff are all in a like beigey armor color. So what I might try is I might try that apothecary white over top of that just to try and give it some definition and see if I can get it to pop. Yeah, that brown's really nice actually. Because these aren't really, I mean, what these are is they're heavy acrylic washes. Like they're not paint. You're not gonna blend with them unless you're gonna do it afterwards. Like I'm gonna use these to tint like the beige, black, and white to do highlights later on. But you're not gonna blend them together. And they don't do their magic trick of like fading and doing that neat spread where like you get the contrast between the dark and the light unless you just kind of use them right out of the pot. So that's looking pretty good. Get the holster there on her sidearm. Get all these straps with some of this brown. And those are details that are big enough that I can come back in and highlight them if I want later on. So I'm not super worried about that. I think that's just arm and gloves. We're gonna do all that brown. There isn't like an armor plate on there. I'm just gonna try and avoid her gun because I think I'm gonna use the Black Templar on the gun. And I'll go back in. That's something I will like highlight the edges on and like paint the clip probably metallic and stuff when I'm done. Yeah, that's pretty slick. I like that. A little bit in there. Make sure that that boot's all brown. There's a bit of green missing actually right there. You can see there's a little white spot where it hasn't fallen to the recess. I'm just gonna mop up a little bit from over there and move it over. Mop it up from the low points and just move it over. I suppose just getting a fresh bunch out. And that's pretty cool. There's a strap on her chest right there for her rifle. And then the interior of this is all brown as well. In the picture, the studio painted one, so I'll do that too. I'm just gonna do this as close to studio paint scheme as I can using these contrast paints. And then there's this side of the holster I didn't get. Just being careful again not to let these like flow into each other. And that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty excited about that. That's a lot of definition for 2 colors in 5 minutes. Which, you know, you can also get through airbrushing and stuff like that. I'm not saying this is going to replace most of the techniques that like sort of veteran Infinity painters are using. But if you want to speed paint an army, man, I would definitely use these contrast paints for that. And if you're intimidated by Infinity miniatures, I think that's going to be a good compromise. Now here's one with it dry. I did one beforehand just to kind of knock it out and see what it was going to look like and see if this is something I wanted to do, because this is for one of my Infinity armies. And there are some spots here, again, it's hard to see when it's shiny and wet where there is white showing through, but that's just because it didn't flow all the way in the recesses. But that's looking pretty nice. That's a pretty brawler, I gotta say. I'm happy with how that went just for like a base coat. And yeah, I can just pick out details of that again, but like the folds of the pants and the folds of the shirt and stuff, like that's pretty much done. Let's try that idea with that apothecary white on here. Is that it? Yeah. Sorry, yeah, it is apothecary. It's gray, but it's called apothecary white. I think it's designed to be put over top of white and just give this some definition. So let's see what we got. Put that on there, put that on there, put on the helmet. Just try and make that pop a little bit. And then the arm, sort of like armor plate right there. Might be a little bit light. I might have been better off going with the what's the other one called? The Basilicum Gray. But let's see how it looks when it dries. I'm always surprised by these things when they dry because they never look like they do when they go on, and they never look like they do out of the pot. Now it is flowing unfortunately into my fatigues, so I want to make sure I get it off of there. I mean, it's popping it a little bit. That's kind of neat. It's giving a little bit of definition. Certainly nothing as strong as what's on the clothing there. And then we're going to throw some of that gray down on the gun. Where's that Basilicum Gray? No, I'm going to use Black Templar actually on the gun. I think Black Templar is going to look good. And then a lighter brown, maybe snakebite leather for the boots. But again, if you're intimidated by Infinity miniatures, man, this is making the detail pop super fast. You know, I'm literally just alternating between these two models so I can wait for them to dry. So you guys don't have to wait on camera for things to dry. I don't have to do any like speed up times, because that's just not as easy as just painting 2 miniatures at the same time and flipping back and forth between them. Yeah, put a little bit on the sensors over here. Maybe just outline the top of this guy. Yeah, I think I would have been better off going with the, we'll use it for the rebreather actually. That's what we'll use it for, just to let the rebreather pop a little bit more. And darken it up. Oh, it looks really good actually. That brings the whole face together. Putting a little bit of this on. Yeah, I was definitely better off. Because what I've basically done here by like kind of cheating and using a little bit of this Black Templar is I've made Basilicum Gray. I've just realized by mixing the two of these together, but that makes all those details pop. That looks pretty great actually. And we'll just cheat here and put a bit of that on the knee pads. And what you can do too is once you've got it down, you can clean your brush and just with some water kind of like clean off the large areas if I don't want it pooling there. So I can clean it off the helmet a little bit, make it a little bit brighter. So when it dries, it's not going to be super, super dark. That's looking pretty good, actually. I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, just for base coats, right, for what I'm doing. But if you were like an amateur Infinity model painter and you were not excited or intimidated by all these details, that's a pretty good looking brawler for not a whole lot of work. Where's my snakebite leather? Do the boots. Get some of this on the boots. So yeah, so I think our theory, or like, you know, our guess basically that using these on Infinity miniatures was gonna actually be really popular because it's gonna make the details pop really well. Yeah, it's looking like it's bearing fruit. These miniatures are ideal for contrast paints just because of how detail rich they are. They don't have a lot of open flat surface. They have lots of recesses for the contrast paints to pool into and give you like that great fade. And again, it's gonna save you. This is the time I want to have steps saved, right? Is when it's little tiny details that my brain is melting over. I'm happy to have a time saver like this, even if it's just putting down base coats and getting a little bit of transition. Like that looks really sharp. I can go in there with some colors and make it pop. And it's not a whole lot of work basically for me to do that. Where's my Creed Cam Life? Just realized I haven't painted the back of her collar. And we'll check on the other one and see how it's drying. But yeah, that's pretty slick. That's a pretty slick, like Hackislam, Ariadna, and these brawlers, I think will all benefit from this camel color and these browns and stuff. And then I'm excited to see what it looks like on power armor, on the heavy infantry and medium infantry folks too, because I think there's a lot of cool effects that are going to take place. Let's have a look at the other one. Yeah, you're coming along nicely. Same nice fades on the drying. The green turned out really nice again. Make sure I got everything while it's still drying a little bit so that I'm not going back and touching up any missed spots. Yeah, it looks pretty great. Let's give it the same treatment. Oh, I did miss a bit of brown there on her hands because I just realized her hands are wearing gloves. But let's do that snakebite leather on the boots first. And I am immensely satisfied with just the way the detail's popping with these paints. The reds for nomads, you know what I mean? Where without an airbrush, it's kind of hard to get that really rich red. And there's lots of like little tiny highlights you're gonna have to pick out. I would definitely use these for that. Oh, you know what this is gonna look good on is actually the mask, because they have like a gold face mask. Oh, that looks slick. Yeah, that turned out really good. I will need to let that dry before I do the rest of the mask because I don't want it to bleed in. But that turned out really good. I just realized actually on the other one, there is a bit of that gold. It's right there. So we'll just paint that in too. Nice. That's some quick and dirty brawlers right there. They just need to be based really. Let's find that. So what was the other brown I was using? Wildwood again. Get those gloves painted so they can dry. Yeah, I'm feeling like my vote is definitely Infinity Miniatures yes for contrast paints. These are pretty ideal. Honestly, I think hilariously, some of the least ideal miniatures to paint with contrast paints are Space Marines. Because their details are so big and smooth. And in the next video, we're going to take a look at painting black power armor, because that was one of the further questions I got, which was, how do you think this is going to look painting black power armor? And my answer was, I don't know. All right, let's put some of that Black Templar down on the gun. I should be able to get away with that because it's not really touching any colors that are still wet. Yeah, that pops really nicely actually. And I can just pick out the edges and give it kind of like a non-metallic, and then just use metallics maybe even on the the little bits like the clip for her rifle. You know, and I'll do this rock at the same time, because this rock's gonna get highlighted gray later on anyway, so black's just a nice base coat. Now the one thing I have found with this Black Templar, is that it does have a bit of gloss to it. It's not as matte as the other ones are. It's a bit shiny when it dries. And that's done. And then I'm gonna get the Basilicum Gray, I think, because that looked good on the helmet of the other one, and actually the armor plates too. I ended up like kind of switching over to it from the white by mixing a bit of the Black Templar and the gray together. And so let's do that Basilicum Gray on the armor plates, and then I'll wet brush just to, if it's too dark, yeah, because it was a little bit too dark, I'm gonna wet brush to just take it off the top of the area. There we go. That looks pretty good. And luckily that face mask is dry now, so I can do this on the rebreather and have it go around the helmet as well. And I'll use a wet brush just to drag it off the raised surfaces after I've given it kind of a touch up. Do the backpack. Yeah, it's gonna look nice when that's dry. Do the backpack and the shoulder pads. Oh, I forgot this gun, but I can just throw some of that gray on there. Actually, I should get this almost the same effect. The gray is pretty thin, I found, but it dries nice and flat, and it lines pretty well too. And again, get a wet brush. I'm licking my brush because I'm, you know, a card-carrying licker of brushes, but you can just get some water and then move it around. And then just this arm plate, and we're in a pretty good spot. That's looking pretty good. Once again, another baller brawler. So I'm gonna put these guys on the spinny thing, the little turntable, so you guys can check them out. And I think we are pretty much done these. And I'm pretty comfortable that I've answered the question, how quickly can you paint Infinity miniatures with these? Because that's two. So that's two brawlers. I mean, one of them I'd already done the browns and the greens on just to see how they were going to turn out before I started shooting. That's two of them in whatever length this video is. And as long as you put the base on these, I mean, a lot of people just call these done when they're dry. That's a pretty slick finish for how quickly that got finished, and it looks pretty great. So yeah, let's get them we'll get them on the turntable, and you guys can take a look. So here are my two brawlers. And I think this is really where these contrast paints are going to shine. On any model that has lots and lots of nice, tricky surface, you're going to get tons of little fades, and it's going to pick out all those wonderful details. So you can see all the different colors, basically, going from darkest to lightest, picking out the clothing, picking out the satchels and all the bags, and even that little bit of gray and black on the masks, picking out all the details in there as well. So if you were intimidated by Infinity miniatures and you weren't excited about painting them, I mean, you saw how fast these got done. All I did was leave them to fully dry and then stuck them on the carousel here on camera for you guys to check out. So this is good enough for, I would say, most Infinity players, and anyone who wants to use it as a base coat. I'm going to go back and touch these guys up, and you'll see them on the paint table next week. So there you go, another What Can Contrast Do? Painting Infinity models.